Welcome to an early morning at the Ride Fast offices, where we are joining our two mates, Glenn and Sean, for a ride. It's simple. We go up the freeway to Mpumalanga, ride some corners, and then ride the freeway back again. And what we have today are three bikes. Three bikes that seemingly have nothing to do with each other. It's a Honda Transalp 750 adventure bike, a BMW R1250 RS Sport Tourer, and an Indian Scout. Why the difference? Well, let's take a look. Starting with the Honda Transalp.
Yeah, now as you probably know, the Transalp is an adventure bike, that's correct. Now this sounds a bit weird. We're going on a road trip and we're taking an adventure bike. I mean, surely we should be doing a bit of off-road. Well, we can. I mean, the RS and the Indian will suffer a little bit, but you know, hey, the Transalp will be fine. The thing is though, is although we're not doing a lot of off-road, in fact no off-road, a lot of people buy adventure bikes and then either hardly ever go off-road or never go off-road. That happens quite a lot. Obviously, I mean, South Africans, you get your hardcore off-roaders naturally, but there are a lot of people, like when they buy SUVs in the car world, where they just buy it because it's big and comfortable and they like riding it. And that's why we're doing a road trip on an adventure bike.
Indeed, the Transalp was reintroduced last year with this, the new iteration. It's a 750cc parallel twin pushing 90 horsepower and 75 Nm of torque, with a body set up for ground clearance and tackling the rough stuff. With that in mind, why do people buy it just for road riding? Well, let's start with looking at its freeway cruising.
Now this bike has some extras, one of which is this taller screen, which works magnificently, especially when you're doing cruising at freeway speeds. I can ride with my visor open, no problem, nothing's hitting me. I'm quite a short bloke, taller people might get a bit more breezy, but for me it's utterly perfect. There's also an optional quick shifter, which is good fun, it works well. And then there's the motor. Now, I mean, obviously this is the mid-range adventure motorcycle, but it's got this kind of grunt to it. And when we originally rode it, at the launch, I said that inside there's an ogre named Edward. And every time you pull the throttle, a hammer comes down, hits Edward on the head, and he goes, whoa, whoa, and he starts turning a handle to propel the motorcycle. A lot of people thought I was joking when I said this, but I wasn't. It's true. There is. When you go for a service, it's a health checkup on Edward. That's what it is. And this bike is comfortable. I mean, I can see why people want to ride adventure bikes. On the freeway like this, especially with a tall screen, this is a more comfortable motorcycle than the RS. It's true. It's a better, more upright seating position, more legroom. Definitely with the screen, there's more wind resistance. It's a very, very comfortable motorcycle. I can see why people want to ride these on the open road.
And the Transalp will hit the road at a new and improved price of 189,000 Rand, with 15,000 Rands worth of accessories on board. That's good stuff. But now we raise the capacity a little bit with the BMW R1250 RS.
This is what we call a sports tourer, which is great. I mean, it just sums it all up. It's a beautiful description. Sport and touring. Right now we're on the freeway, so there's a heck of a lot more touring than there is sport. And it's not too badly, actually. It's a typical BMW 1250 motor, all that kind of stuff. The legroom's not the greatest, I have to say, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, this bike, the sports part of the bike needs ground clearance, so it kind of sacrifices a little bit from the touring part, but it's not like this thing is really cramped. And that's good news.
This specific bike was loaned to us by BMW East Rand, so thank you to them. What's interesting about it is that it's a sports tourer, and sports tourers seem to be overlooked by most South Africans, which is odd because they are bikes that are essentially 2-in-1s. The RS has the now famous 1250 motor, chucking out 136 horsepower and a massive 143 newton meters of torque. And that's fun. What's more is that this bike has every electronic tidbit you can imagine, including electronic suspension. And that's all for a price starting at 294,000 Rand.
What's nice is that you got a whole lot of stuff to play with. I mean, the thing is connectivity and connectivity and connectivity and everything like that. I don't have it connected right now, but it can happen. If you want more touring mode, the screen's adjustable. No fancy electronic doohickeys, no weird lever system. You just simply grab it like this, pull, there we go, we're now in touring mode. Also, this thing has cruise control, which is kind of fun. And I always find what I do with cruise control is I use the cruise control for a while, kind of relax a little bit, and then I turn it off, and then I ride for a little bit, then I relax for a little bit, and it kind of breaks up the journey. It's very cool. And of course, this BMW Boxer motor, it just handles freeway speeds like a doddle. If you want to go quite fast, you can. It's not going to do superbike, groundbreaking, death-defying, all of that, but it's fast enough. You can go well enough to get arrested, at least.
And then we move on to the Indian Scout. And this bike poses an interesting question.
Of course, the Indian Scout is a cruiser, an American cruiser, which leads us on to an interesting question. Why is it that in America, people all seem to ride bikes like these? And over far, long distances. You know, America is straight, it's far, it's everything. People ride these things long distances. And yet when you hear people talk about doing long distances in South Africa, you have to either have an adventure bike or a touring bike. It's true. Why is that?
This bike certainly wins the parking lot contest. It is utterly gorgeous. A small gasboard of beautiful little details and classical bits. It looks like a crafted grandfather clock in the first class lounge on the Titanic. Well, before it sank, obviously. It is class personified. And good fun to ride.
So, number one rule, you can't be unhappy when you're riding a Scout. You just can't. This bike is so nippy, so lively, so much fun. I mean, that motor, you can't describe it. It just got such a nippiness, a kind of a... it kind of inspires you. It's like, come on, you know, you can do this. And you kind of go, yeah, I can do this. And you get all excited. You can't be unhappy riding this bike.
This exact bike is the smaller 1133 model. It's good, although we prefer the bigger 1250. It pushes out a commendable 97 Nm from its liquid-cooled V-twin motor, all while looking absolutely stunning. Anyway, so far freeways have gone all good and well, but Mpumalanga is famous for corners, so let's try some of those. And once again we go back to the Honda Transalp, which is defending the road honor of the adventure bike.
Okay, one of the sketchy parts about riding an adventure bike like this one on a road like this, a tar road that's all twisty and, you know, a bit ominous, all that kind of stuff, is that this bike has, there's no other word for it, off-road tires. And that has always been sketchy. Until maybe 10 years ago. And then suddenly, just like that, off-road tires suddenly weren't that bad. An off-road tire on a road bike just used to be, it's always a death trap, especially if it was raining, especially if it was cold, it was a death trap. And then suddenly they just started making tires that weren't. The other thing about adventure bikes is previously it was like, well, they had off-road suspension. So it was like sitting on a sponge cake. And the bike would just wallow back and forwards with the suspension, and any input you give anywhere, you get those wallowing, kind of like you're sitting on top of a sponge cake. That's gone. Somehow they managed to make adventure bikes work on the dirt and in the tar. Now we said the Transalp suspension is a little bit hard for the dirt, you know, some of the really rough dirt bits. But the other side of that, the other side of the coin to that is that it's extremely good on the road. For example, this feels spectacular. Feel the ogre in the motor going, "Rah!" Ooh.
While the bigger BMW RS was slightly less comfy on the freeway than the adventure bike, it certainly made up for it in the corners.
Also, we're approaching corners, so let's put the screen into sports mode. There we go, sports mode activated. Right, let's take some corners. What is so great about this bike is that it was relatively comfortable on the way here. You get more comfortable bikes than this, but this was comfortable enough, you know? You're not taking strain while riding up the freeway. But then you get to these spots, you've got that 1250 motor that's all nothing but just mounds and mounds of torque connected to a quick shifter, two-way quick shifter, and suddenly it goes from suddenly the touring part of this bike becomes the sports part. I'm kind of upset I'm in ordinary kind of road riding clothes. I sort of wish I bought a pair of leathers with some knee sliders. I'll leave some of that knee slider on the tar. That's what I'll do. This thing is so, look, it's kind of heavy. When you first kind of lean, you can feel that there's some weight on this bike. But at the same time, it's so stable. It's like nothing. Lots of confidence going on here. I feel it.
So far we have two bikes that have surprised us in the bends. But surely that drawn-out Cruiser Scout has to be the letdown. It makes sense. However...
So here's the thing about America. Famously, it's straight. It's flat, it's straight. I mean, there's some rocky bits kind of to the west, but apart from that, it's all sort of flat and relatively straight. And that's what America's famous for, which means that their bikes usually don't turn so well. Except this thing, well, it does. It doesn't, I mean, okay, it's not a racing bike that's going to break lap records, but it works. I mean, there isn't much ground clearance, so you're not going to lean that far, but it does. It tips in like nothing. It's easy, it's stable. That motor is still so peppy, so usable. So much fun. You're not going to go up and down these passes like a super bike. The other two bikes are going to kill this thing, no problem. But it's fun. It's fun. And I'm having a good time. It's like cornering a lounge chair.
And with us being joyfully surprised, we started the journey back home and took some time to think about these three motorcycles.
So here's the thing about adventure bikes is, and we've said this before on the show a few times, adventure motorcycles are now the kind of all-purpose motorcycle. Back in the day, they were either more off-road or more on-road. You couldn't mix them together, but nowadays people are so clever. The engineers behind everything to do with these motorcycles are so clever that this is a bike that is comfortable in any situation. This bike will go off-road, obviously. It will be very comfortable on an open freeway. I mean, if you want more top speed and a bit more oomph, then you're going to have to get the Africa Twin or, one of the equivalents. And even in the twisty stuff, I mean, it was great. It was good. I didn't feel a bit out of depth. I didn't feel a bit nervous. I didn't feel anything. And that's what adventure bikes used to feel like, especially with the knobbly tires. It's incredible. It's amazing what they've done with adventure motorcycles.
It's the same good spirits on the BMW RS.
So as we said, sports tourer. Down the main freeway, it's comfortable enough, it's upright enough, there's enough screen, there's enough everything, the seat's comfy. It's not quite as comfortable as some of the other tourers, but it's comfortable enough. You can sit in this thing all day. You will be alright. And then you get to the sports part, you get to the corners, and it's magnificent. I mean, it's not a super bike, but it's magnificent. I wish I had leathers. It would have been a lot of fun. And then once you're done with the corners, get back on the freeway and ride it home.
And finally, it's the Cruiser, in this case the beautiful Indian Scout. Like the Sports Tourer, the Scout is what it says on the box. It's a cruiser. It cruises. It's not made for high speed, although it can do it. The trick is to sit back, relax, and take it easy. Cruising around while looking cool, feeling cool, and having fun. So, today we had 3 different motorcycles, and all 3 were good fun. That's just the way motorcycles are.